So good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for attending our session, what the new norm means in cybersecurity. But before starting today's session, let me first introduce ourselves, and I will first hand over to our guest speaker today, who is John Kraft from Vita. So over to you, John.
Hi, good morning, Cécile. My name is John Kraft. I am the Deputy CISO for the Commonwealth of Virginia. I have approximately 23 years of information security management experience and hold a master's degree in information security from James Madison University. At Vita, we work to support all the agencies of the Commonwealth, serving roughly 9 million citizens daily, and we work very hard to protect their data.
Thank you, John. So Zeina, over to you.
Thank you, Cécile. Hello, John, and hello, everyone. So I'm Zeina Zakhour. I'm the Global CTO for Cybersecurity in Atos. I have been in the cybersecurity field for over 20 years now. My team and I are responsible of the development of cybersecurity services and products for our customers.
Thank you, Zeina. So let me introduce myself. I'm Cécile Leroux, and I'm Cybersecurity Marketing Director at Atos. So now, without waiting more, let's enter into the discussion for our today's topic. So as we all know and all face, the COVID-19 crisis has been a severe crisis and is still actually a severe crisis that we all live. It has impacted all of us, companies, individuals, health, the way the business is run. And what becomes clear now is that whatever the future will be, it will not be back to the normal situation. We will all have to define and to face what will be the new norm. So Zeina, from your perspective, what was the impact of this crisis in terms of business continuity and cybersecurity?
Yeah, well, you know, Cécile, this new normal is no longer a hashtag. It's really become a reality on the ground. So organization has to adapt. Of course, certain organizations were already prepared. They had a cyber resilience strategy in place. They managed to adapt as fast as possible. But in the end, there were a lot of changes that happened. This new normal brought to us first a need for remote access, for an agile and extendable remote access. So certain organizations had to switch directly to remote working, telework, of 95%, 98% of their employees. So they needed a platform, a remote access platform that is scalable for that. And they adopted the cloud-enabled platform, which we call SASE, Secure Access Service Edge, for instance. We've seen also with our customer a huge demand for cloud-based collaboration tools. Well, of course, this has always been the case before COVID. Organizations were adopting, but it accelerated with the COVID because they needed to put their people together in order to work remotely. We've also noticed, for instance, a need to adapt to distributed operation model, which means that organizations, some of them were always about on-prem operations. They had to adapt and implement remote operation. How do you secure those important access? They have privileged access. How do you secure them? How do you have a fine-grained access control on them? All of those were challenges that organizations had to face. And then even the simplest one, I would say, for certain organizations, they needed to adopt bring your own device because they didn't have enough equipment to put all those 90+% of their employees on a remote access model. So all those changes, some of them were part of already an established crisis management and cyber resilience approach. But still, I think the best would be to go to you, John. I mean, you have hands-on experience. Your agency must secure services for over 8 million citizens. So how did you manage your cyber resilience during this pandemic?
Well, it was certainly a challenge, and we had existing infrastructure in place that would support a standard workforce where the majority of our employees were going into their standard, their typical office spaces to do the work. And at the time that the pandemic hit, we could support roughly 5,000 concurrent remote sessions with our existing infrastructure. we had to scale that very quickly when Governor Northam issued his executive order in March, requiring people to stay at home. And fortunately, we had agreements with our suppliers. In Virginia, we have a multi-supplier model where we have outsourced a significant portion of the infrastructure management responsibilities to various suppliers, of which one is Atos. And through those agreements, we were able to scale very rapidly and grow our remote workforce capability by almost 700% over a course of 30 days. So we went from being able to support roughly 5,000 remote connections to 35,000 within 30 days. That was through a combination of scaling our existing VPN infrastructure, as well as implementing cloud-based client connectors and VDI solutions. One of the other challenges we had, of course, were with people working remotely from home. They were much more reliant on workplace collaboration tools and conferencing utilities. And we found that the existing options that we had, while fine for a traditional workforce, needed some attention with a rapidly expanding remote workforce. And we had to expand our offerings to some additional platforms in order to support all of the conferencing and collaboration needs for the workforce.
Actually, thank you very much, John. Indeed, we saw that many companies had to face this situation by having their employees moving and working from home, so moving to home working, and the need to make sure that applications remain secured, can still be accessed securely, was actually a big challenge for most of the companies. And we also saw that at Atos, and with some solutions that we had, and how can we support and help our customers to face this situation using indeed secured access, but also we mentioned VPN, so in order to have secured communication of the data that is in transit, so how to implement solutions, sometimes in a very short notice. And it was also not very easy for companies to both, implement solutions that were on one hand fitting the need to have business continuity and still being secured. We also, with the cloud and the increase of the cloud access and to applications, we also saw some needs around the CASB as well, and the Cloud Access Security Broker applications. In order, you mentioned the SASE, but CASB is being one component of it. And in order really to enable the employees to be to access the applications securely, and having the same level of security policies than the ones that we can have in the company. So it was a big challenge that we actually faced during this situation. And based on what you explained, John, so on how you faced it, but can you also give us some more details or information on what were the cybersecurity measures that were already in place and helped you to face that situation?
Sure. I think that we had a fairly robust information security infrastructure and platform prior to the pandemic, and it's only strengthened since then. Some of the components that we have in place, and one of the things that we place a lot of reliance on in the Commonwealth, are our standards and policies. We have a very robust set of standards and policies. Sometimes folks maybe consider it too robust, but we have that to fall back on, and that forms the backbone of everything that we do in the Commonwealth. And that, coupled with our existing supplier agreements, supply chain is a very important thing, and we have a very good supply chain management capability to work with our suppliers to be able to ensure that we can scale rapidly and be flexible enough to meet changing environments. But those two things are or less tangible. The more tangible and the technology factors that we had in place is we had very tightly integrated identity and access management in the Commonwealth, as well as single sign-on across multiple applications and methods of access, because that's crucial when you're dealing with a remote workforce, so that they're not having to manage multiple sets of credentials and having to sign in multiple times to different applications. It becomes much more burdensome, complex, and less secure in that respect. That, coupled with the fact that we've been pushing multi-factor authentication out throughout for the past several years to all of our infrastructure, that really gave us a good amount of peace of mind that we were less, or I guess more resilient towards password attacks with our remote workforce, since they were certainly being targeted more in this environment. That coupled with our enterprise cloud oversight model, where we are rapidly expanding right now into cloud-based platforms, since we already had our foothold in there with the major cloud vendors such as Amazon, Microsoft Azure, Oracle. We were able to step into that and expand our presence there to enhance our workplace collaboration platforms very rapidly.
Thank you, John. So, actually, also in those past months, since the beginning of the year, we've seen an increasing numbers of phishing attacks. Actually, an increase of 350% since the beginning of the year. This period has actually been also somehow, can say, low-hanging fruit for some of our cyber attackers, because with phishing attacks was a very good way for them actually to gain new information and collect the data, in the sense that more people were working remotely, and by working remotely, less, I would say, split between the professional and the personal life, and of course COVID, and how to prevent being infected by the virus was very much used. But it was not the only ones that we faced during this period. And so, Zeina, from your perspective and as a CTO and looking around all the technology impacts, what were for you the most important cyber attacks we faced in the past months?
Yeah, well, what I can say, Cécile, is definitely the cybercrime industry did not stop. It was business as usual for them. I would even say they increased their attacks. During the peak of the pandemic, we had to deal with 200,000 attacks per week. So as Cécile, you've said, phishing was the easiest approach. Phishing, leveraging, the fear of people or the need for people to have information on the COVID. So sending emails on this front, sending email masquerading as coming from health authorities, governmental institutions, to trick people into opening those emails and infecting their devices, whether it's a smartphone, tablet, or whether it's a classical laptop. And also we've seen, for instance, SMS phishing campaigns, so smishing campaigns that were used a lot. In the UK, we've seen this type of campaign masquerading as text messages coming from the NHS, telling people that, for instance, you've been in contact with someone who has been infected, click on this link and all of that. And the thing is that they don't only steal personal information, they infect the machines as well. So phishing was definitely one of the low-hanging fruit, as you said, Cécile. We had to deal with mobile applications masquerading as legitimate apps, which were infected as well. We had to deal with malicious domains. I mean, we've noted since January that over 50,000 domains that were created related to COVID. 10%, a minimum of 10%, at least for the analysis that have been done to this day, 10% are actually malicious websites. So this is a bit of how those cyber criminals try to leverage people's fear in order to customize, let's say, their cyber attack on the COVID. But also, you know, the classical type of attacks were still very used, actually. If you look at ransomware was increased by at least a factor of 9 during the pandemic, targeting specifically financial services, healthcare, and let's say any operator of essential services. And we know, if I'm talking about healthcare, whether it's an organization that doing research on the topic or they are helping and dealing with the infected people, here we're talking about really the safety of the people that was at stake. And they knew what they were doing, because by launching this type of cyber attacks, when you are in a state of urgency where you have the life of people at stake, then yeah, probably, if you don't have any other option, you will pay the ransom. So those were the type of things that we have noticed. I mean, I could go on for a lot, but I'm interested with your view, John. From your side, what do you think changed in the threat landscape? What are the new type of attack vectors that you've seen or that organizations need to watch out for, whether it's new actually or even the classical ones?
Sure. I can't really go into any specifics with regards to any specific threats that we faced, but certainly during this pandemic period, we've seen that our attack surface area has certainly grown for most organizations with the remote workforce, and bad actors are certainly trying to take advantage of that. As you said, I mean, we're seeing a proliferation of malicious domains. We're seeing an uptick in phishing attacks. I think in the Commonwealth, we've seen roughly about a 20% increase in phishing attacks since the pandemic began. Fortunately, we have some good filtering, but it still comes through. We do regularly see spear phishing attacks targeting specific individuals anymore, and oftentimes the subject matter for these phishing emails are COVID related, trying to prey on folks' fears and uncertainty. I think that one of the things that we've seen grow the most personally has been ransomware events. We've seen a fairly large indicator that ransomware has grown, especially amongst locality governments, where bad actors are targeting those systems, especially while in a lot of cases, some of those organizations don't have the resources to be able to maintain 100% staffing during that period, and they're trying to take advantage of that and leverage their attacks. They feel like they're going to be more successful, and in some cases they are more successful. We've been tracking that and assisting localities since the pandemic began with combating that and trying to enhance their programs or security programs to be able to accommodate for that and account for the remote workforce so that they're less vulnerable to those sorts of attacks. But so I would say overall, what we've seen the majority of is an increase in phishing and ransomware from the Commonwealth's perspective.
Thank you, John. So actually the concept as well that we can hear and we know, which is a security by design concept, is seems to me and from what I hear, from what you said, Zeina, from what you're saying, John, to be even more relevant in order to be, I would say, prepared, where we cannot be always 100% prepared, but be as well as possible prepared to what will come next, is indeed very important. So then we can see cybersecurity no more really as a bottleneck or as a roadblock in running business, but really as an enabler. One point a bit earlier, John, you mentioned that sometimes the systems are seen as too robust by some people, but I mean, indeed, I think it's something that is very interesting also to see how we position ourselves in cybersecurity in the business and the way we run the business in order really to be the partner for the business to be run efficiently whatever the situation will be, and also to be able to face these new norms that we're talking about, and also to be prepared to work hands in hands and be associated to any new process that will be implemented in the company, so that cybersecurity is not thought afterwards, but at the same time as we are building the right or the new processes or the improvements of the processes. So in order also to be better prepared and to see how can we work hands in hands, how can we define these boundaries of the new norm, what would you recommend to look after or to implement in priorities to build this future?
So I guess looking towards the future, I would say that the key things that any organization would want to focus on is ensuring that they do have a solid GRC, governance, risk, and compliance platform based on solid standards and policies. In the Commonwealth, we based our security standards on the NIST 853 set of standards, and then we enhanced that. We took a working model that is proven and chose to base our standards on that and refine it. Now, we have roughly we've added about I would say 40% additional requirements and I guess refinement to that policy, but that's where the bones are, and we find that that's good for us in the fact that since we are based on a recognized standard that's widely adopted, our suppliers have less of an issue in being able to comply with that, because most of our suppliers are going to be NIST compliant in order to work with the United States federal government. So we think that lowers the bar to having a supplier be able to meet the Commonwealth security standards, and makes it easier for us moving into the future, working with any new suppliers that we bring on board to our platform. That said, so you have your governance, risk, and compliance. You want to make sure that that's solid, but you also need to make sure your supply chain is working effectively as well. You need to make sure that your agreements are solid, that they are flexible, and they are scalable in order to cover any unforeseen event. Because honestly, who would have thought we would be where we are today a year ago? I know I didn't. I don't think anybody was prepared to face the challenges we've faced over the past 5 months at this point last year. And I think that with Vita, we were fortunate in the fact that we had already been underway with our multi-supplier model for almost 2 years, and we were able to adapt and adjust a bit more quickly because we already had those agreements in place, and we had built this model to be flexible and scalable. The other thing that you're going to want to make sure that you have from a future readiness standpoint is a comprehensive continuity of operations plan. If you know how you're going to respond in the event of a unforeseen event, that's crucial, because you need to identify the individuals who are going to be your primary contacts and what responsibilities they have, and how you're going to respond to this when a good portion of your workforce is either unavailable or trying to adjust to a now remote workforce methodology. From an operational and security architecture standpoint, you want to make sure that you have as much integration as possible to make your application and infrastructure integrated, so things such as identity and access management, data loss prevention, multi-factor authentication, you're going to want to make sure that that's ubiquitous throughout your platform as much as possible. You can't always do that, of course, because it becomes a bit cost prohibitive. But but as much as feasible, you want to make sure you have those technologies, and you can place reliance on those technologies to be able to allow for your workforce to leverage that and not have to. It not only does it make it more secure, but it makes their work less frustrating, and rather than have to juggle in between 8 different applications and 8 different sets of credentials, they can do that seamlessly using one set of credentials. That's, I guess, from a high level where I see that. Zeina, what do you think, from your perspective, it takes for an organization to be future ready?
I think, John, you called it, no one would have expected that we will have to deal with this COVID crisis. And I think, in a way, being future ready is about be ready for anything. And to do that, I think we will need to change our mindset so that we have adaptability and flexibility as core element of any strategy. Now, I know that certain decisions were done for certain companies on a hurry. Maybe we adopted bring your own device without embedding security by design. Maybe we went to the cloud, but we don't have any visibility on the configuration of those applications, of those SaaS applications we adopted. Maybe we don't have any CASB as an organization. Certain decisions were made in a hurry because we were in a crisis. Now is the time to prepare for the future. So I do believe organization will definitely need to do a test and an assessment of what has been done during those 4 months. Even whether those were part of the cyber resilience program that they have, it would be really good to test whether by implementing the cyber resilience, it went as expected, as well as, aligned with the security strategy and policies in place. So in my view, this test and assess is definitely the foundation so that we are really future ready. Maybe one other point I think for organization, they need to focus on people. We focus a lot on technology, which is essential, of course, but we need also to focus on people. I mean, as John, you said, we're changing the way of how people work. So there are a lot of changes to deal with in the end for people. There are also a lot of changes in terms of the threat vectors, more motivation from cyber criminals. So we need to make sure that our employees are aware of what are those new type of threats. What does it mean if I'm working from home? Even, the basic stuff, if you have a home digital assistant, make sure that you're configuring it properly or deactivate it even if you're having some confidential business discussion where it is next to you. Though we need to train our people. We need to explain to them what this new normal means and what are the cyber risks that come with this new normal, which is as it comes with any new technology. But they need to understand what are the best practices, how we need to work and react, while making sure that security is really embedded, part of the equation. I would say also one key element for organization is also to understand that security is different. One cybersecurity doesn't fit all. So whatever are those services that you have implemented, the risk and the impact is different. I mean, we were talking, John, the impact from your side, you're impacting not a business, it's citizens. It's really the safety of citizens sometimes that's impacted. For certain business, it's maybe the entire business of the organization that will be impacted if they are not future ready and cyber ready. So organizations should understand also, as part of my business, what does it mean, this new normal? Maybe I have adopted, in terms of industrial environment, I have adopted industrial Internet of Things or RPAs. Has this been done or will this be done with security embedded by design, as Cécile said? If I'm talking about healthcare, for instance, with the Internet of Medical Things that will be implemented in order to help us maybe address a second wave, if there is any. But anyway, those type of innovation that are going to be implemented in those environments, because they need to make sure that security is embedded by design. One thing that I'm sure of, and just because I'm mindful of the time, one thing that I'm sure of is that the digital revolution did save the day. There's no question here. We managed to continue, many organizations managed to continue doing their business. We managed to continue servicing citizens because we had this digital services and this digital revolution. So this saved the day. But still, the only constant is change. So we need to make sure that when we're adopting this digital revolution, it doesn't turn into more of a curse than a blessing. And to do that, we really need to make sure that cybersecurity is embedded by design. And I think now is really the time to take this time, assess, make sure that whatever we've done, hopefully we've done it right with the security embedded in it, and then make sure that we're ready for the future. So whatever we're going to face, security will be a part of the equation. So I want to thank everyone. Thank you, John, for joining us. Thank you, Cécile. Thank you, everyone that are watching us. Please don't hesitate to join in 1 hour. We have a session on Zero Trust, which is an important element also for being future ready. Don't hesitate to join this session. If you have any question, you can actually reach out to us on the chat, and you can even, if you want, book a one-to-one with a cybersecurity expert. Thank you, and we hope to hear from you soon.